She came to on a splintered workbench, body shaking, clothing shredded, with an unfamiliar man looming over her. They had yanked her from a wagon not long before. She had fought back harder than they anticipated, caught the wagon rail on the way down, and the world went dark. When her eyes opened again, she was in an open ranch yard outside Trinidad, Colorado, the afternoon sun hammering down like something with a grudge. They had not even bothered dragging her inside. Eliza May Holloway did not scream. She did not plead. She looked up at the man. Gray whiskers, cold eyes, one hand resting near the iron on his hip, and spoke in a voice that had been wrung dry of everything. "If that's what you're here for, go on." She said it the way a woman says something she has already lived through too many times to pretend otherwise. Not courage, surrender. Because every time she had resisted, it had only cost her more. Dust drifted. A horse stomped behind the fence. Somewhere nearby, men were watching like it was entertainment. Ezekiel Boone did not move the way she had prepared herself for. He did not reach for her. He did not grin. He shrugged off his coat, moved toward her slowly and deliberately, and laid it across her body like something worth covering. Then he turned around and put his back to her. That alone was enough to unsettle her. Men like him did not turn their backs. Voices rose at the gate. Two riders slouched on the fence, laughing like the whole thing was a joke someone had told for their benefit. One of them called out that the woman still belonged to them by right. Ezekiel did not answer immediately. He crossed the yard, passed the table where Eliza lay still watching, and stopped at the gate. His hand dropped to his revolver, not quick, not nervous, just settled there like it had always belonged. The taller rider dropped from his horse and stepped into the yard like he was owed the ground beneath his boots. He made it 2 steps. Ezekiel hit him once. No preamble, no theatrics. One blow, hard enough to put the man face first in the dirt. The second rider backed his horse up fast, all the laughter gone from his face. Ezekiel said it low, and he said it once. "She's finished with you," they rode off. Not quietly and not done, but they rode. Eliza lay still beneath the coat, eyes open wide, chest rising unevenly. She had watched men harm other men before. That was nothing new. What was new, what had never happened once in her life, was a man positioning himself between her and the worst of the world. But she did not trust it. She had learned the hard way that anything given could be taken back, and nothing ever came free. The yard settled. The dust dropped, and one question took root in her chest and would not let go. What did a man like Ezekiel Boone actually want from a woman who had nothing left to offer? He did not look back at her for a long stretch of time. He stood at the gate watching the direction those men had disappeared, making certain they kept going. Only then did he turn around. Eliza had not moved. She was rigid, wrapped in his coat, braced for the part she already knew was coming. It did not come. He walked to the water trough, pulled out a cloth, soaked it, wrung it out without hurrying, then carried it over and set it on the edge of the table beside her. Not on her. Beside her. Near enough to reach, far enough to mean something. "Clean yourself up," he said. Simple, flat. The way someone says a thing when they mean it exactly as said, nothing underneath it. That confused her more than cruelty would have. He stepped back again and gave her space like it was something that mattered. Eliza did not move right away. She had been taught, by experience rather than words, that kindness had a shelf life, and that waiting long enough always revealed the real price. But the price did not show. A horse huffed somewhere behind the fence. Dry grass scraped across the yard in the wind. Nothing changed. Slowly, careful of every aching muscle, she pushed herself upright and picked up the cloth. Her hand trembled as she pressed it against the gash on her arm. He did not step forward. He did not stare. He looked elsewhere. That was new. "You paid them off," she said after a while. Her voice came out rougher than she intended. Ezekiel lifted one shoulder and let it drop. "They had papers claiming you owed a debt. I settled it and burned the paperwork." They both knew that was not the whole of it. Eliza let out a slow breath. Men did not throw money at strangers, not without expecting something returned. She pulled his coat tighter around herself, eyes still tracking him. "So what do you get out of it?" she asked. Quiet. Careful. He met her gaze then. Not hard, not soft. Somewhere in between. You rest until you can stand on your own. After that, where you go is your business. No claim. No strings dangling where she could not see them. Just that. It sounded too plain to be real. Eliza nearly laughed, but nothing came out because she could not remember the last time anyone had handed her a choice. Not when they married her off without asking. Not when they blamed her for a child that never came. Not when her husband and his family passed her around like something that could be reassigned. Not once. And here was this man who could have taken anything he wanted, speaking about her choices like the word meant something ordinary. That was what made it dangerous. Things that did not add up had a way of adding up wrong later. She looked at the ground beneath the table, then back at him. "Men don't do this," she said. Ezekiel leaned against the post beside him, unhurried, tired in a way that had nothing to do with weakness. "Most don't," he said. It landed without defense, without pride. Just a fact sitting in the air between them. The sun had dropped another notch. Long shadows cut across the yard, and for the first time in longer than she could count, no one was pulling at her, pushing her, or telling her where to be. She did not know what to do with stillness like that, so she did the one thing she still knew how to do. She watched him carefully and waited, because one thing still did not sit right. If he had no interest in her body and no interest in her money, then what had made Ezekiel Boone step into something that was not his problem? And what exactly was he risking by keeping her here? The next morning, Ezekiel saddled up before the heat had fully settled in. He did not ask Eliza if she wanted to come along. He simply said he had business in town, and that if she stayed at the ranch alone, the men who had ridden off might decide to come back once he was gone. That was enough. Trinidad was already moving when they rode in. Wagons, noise, men talking over each other, women watching from covered porches, and the particular kind of silence that travels just behind a fresh rumor. People noticed them. They always would. A man like Ezekiel Boone riding in beside a young woman wrapped in his coat was not something a small town let pass. Eliza felt the attention before she heard it. Eyes and low voices and the particular weight of collective judgment. He did not slow down. He rode directly to the general store, tied off his horse and helped her down without holding on a moment longer than necessary. That too did not go unnoticed. Inside, heads turned. A smirk from one man, studied indifference from another. Ezekiel walked to the counter without acknowledging either and addressed the clerk the way he addressed everything, plainly and without ceremony. He spoke Eliza's full name, said she was employed on his ranch, said she would be paid honest wages. Then he asked the man to write it in the ledger and waited until it was done. No declaration. No raised voice. Just facts, set down in ink where no one could quietly rearrange them. The room shifted. Not dramatically, just the way a room shifts when something true gets said out loud in front of witnesses. Because men in that town understood what it meant when a landowner put a bruised woman on his payroll, in public, in writing, in the middle of the day. It meant he was placing his name beside hers on whichever side of the line people chose to draw. Outside, the talk moved faster than horses. By the time they stepped back into the street, opinion was already forming on both sides. Some shook their heads. Some looked away. A few looked at Ezekiel the way people look at a man who has just made a costly mistake and does not seem to know it yet. Eliza walked beside him without speaking, but something inside her had shifted. Not trust, not fully, but something in the same general direction. They were nearly back to the horses when a voice cut down from the saloon porch. Rough, whiskey-soaked, deliberately mean. A man leaned there grinning, the kind of grin that knows it has an audience and likes itself for it. He said her name wrong on purpose, and then said the kind of thing that makes a street go completely still. Ezekiel stopped walking. Eliza felt her chest go tight. She had heard worse spoken about her. But this time something was different, and she could feel it before she could name it. She was not standing alone, and the man beside her was not walking away. Ezekiel let the silence hold for a moment, long enough for every person on that street to register exactly what had been said and who had said it. Then he walked toward the saloon porch, steady, no rush, the kind of walk that carries its own message before a word gets spoken. The man on the porch saw him coming and laughed louder, playing to the crowd. He pushed off the post, stepped down into the street like he had something to prove, and said something worse. Something about what Eliza had been through. Something no man with any decency says out loud, and he said it loud enough to make sure everyone heard. Ezekiel stopped directly in front of him. Said nothing, then hit him once, clean. The man went down hard, hat rolling off into the dirt, face first, making no dignified exit. No one on that street moved. The piano inside the saloon fell silent. Even the men who had been pretending not to watch stopped pretending. Ezekiel stood over him, not angry, not proud. Just finished. Get her name right next time, he said. He turned his back on the man in the dirt and walked away like the matter was already behind him. Eliza stood still for one long breath. Then she followed, and something in the street changed, not loudly but thoroughly. People were no longer watching the way they watched something shameful. They were watching the way they watched something they did not expect to see and are still working out how to carry home, some with doubt. Some with something that looked like respect, and a few with a wariness that had nothing to do with Eliza. They rode out without conversation, but what was behind them did not stay behind. That afternoon, a woman came to the ranch, old, deliberate, the kind of woman who had seen enough of life to stop being impressed by most of it. She asked for Eliza, not for Ezekiel. They stood together in the shade beside the water trough. The woman did not ease into it. She said she had brought half the children in that county into the world, and she remembered Eliza. Then she said one sentence that made the earth feel less certain beneath Eliza's feet. It was never you. It never once was. She did not say Harlan's name. She did not need to. And she offered no long explanation, because some truths do not require decoration. Eliza felt something shift inside her chest, something that had been compressed and fixed in place for years. Every night she had spent taking blame that was not hers. Every bruise tied to a failing that had been invented for her. Every word designed to make her believe she was the reason for all of it. She did not cry. Her hands, though, would not stay still. From the porch, Ezekiel watched. He did not step in. He did not make it about himself. He simply let her have the moment without interruption, but his own trouble was already forming. Down in town, Silas Pruitt was hearing about the street, the punch, and the silence that followed it. And men like Silas did not watch control slip from their hands without reaching to take it back. That evening, Ezekiel checked his horses twice. He loaded his rifle without making a production of it. And when the sun went low, the road beyond the dry creek went quiet, the specific kind of quiet that does not come from peace. The kind that arrives just before a man learns exactly how far someone else is prepared to go, and this time, it was not only Eliza they were coming for. The road past the dry creek did not stay quiet long. They came just before dark, 3 riders first, then 2 more spreading wide behind them. The way men ride when they have rehearsed this kind of thing, Ezekiel had already seen it coming. He stepped off the porch with the rifle in hand. No rushing. No visible fear. Eliza stood in the doorway behind him. She did not retreat into the dark. Not this time. One of them fired wide, a warning shot or something meant to look like one. Another man tried to circle wide to the left. Ezekiel put one shot into the dirt directly in front of the lead horse. Not at the riders, not yet. A declaration that he knew what they were doing and was not moved by any of it. One of them fired back. Close enough to raise dust near his boots. Then Harlan came in from behind the others, louder and more frantic than the rest, a man trying to prove ownership over something that had never truly belonged to him. He called out Eliza's name like a command. She stepped forward from the doorway, not far. Just enough. You lost that right, she said. Her voice did not waver. The men noticed. This was not a woman they could drag away anymore. This was not a man they could unsettle. Whatever Silas Pruitt's plan had been, it had walked into the wrong yard. One by one, they pulled back. No final speech, no dramatic retreat, just men quietly recognizing they had miscalculated. The dust came up, and then they were gone. The ranch fell into genuine quiet. Ezekiel lowered the rifle. He did not look at Eliza right away. He let the silence settle before he spoke. "You can go," he said, "if you want to." That's always been true. No chains. No manufactured debt. No hidden costs she had not been told about. Eliza looked out at the open land stretching in every direction. Then she looked back at him. Not the way she had looked at him that first day on the table, measuring threat, calculating distance, waiting for the inevitable. She looked at him the way a person looks at something they have been told does not exist, and are slowly being forced to accept that it does. "I know," she said, and she stayed. Not because the road had closed behind her, not because she had no other direction to walk, but because for the first time in her life, staying was a choice she made for herself. Sometimes the whole shape of a life does not change in a single dramatic moment. Sometimes it changes because one person refuses to behave the way everyone else has. Ezekiel Boone did not rescue Eliza May Holloway by force. He gave her something rarer, the space to choose and the patience to wait while she did it. That is something a great many people never receive. If this story stayed with you, I want to hear about it. Drop something in the comments. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there, because I read those, and I remember them. And I keep coming back with more stories that I think are worth your time. I will leave you with one question before you go. When you see someone being pushed down and the easier path is to walk past, what do you actually do? And when life offers you a place where you are treated as someone worth choosing, do you trust it, or do you keep one foot pointed toward the door? If this one meant something, take a second to like and subscribe. It keeps stories like this one moving. I will be right here.